Hi, everyone. My name's Jason.
I'm Mateen.
And welcome back to the Elevated Convo podcast. For those that don't know, on this podcast, we tackle modern day questions with a spiritual perspective. We pull in different quotes from religious sources, older secular sources. The thesis behind the show is that there's a lot of wisdom in these older texts that like young people our age, maybe neglect when it comes to dealing with modern issues. And yet you'll be amazed at how applicable some of the things that were written 2,000-3,000 years ago, how applicable they can be to the issues that we deal with today. And this question this week, a listener submitted question, comes from Raya, and she's asking about religion in general, and specifically, you know, she struggles with the fact that religion has been used to justify so many, unfortunately, terrible things that have happened throughout history. She sees the value in religion by her own admission, but it's just kind of hard for her to square with the fact that all these horrible things have happened. It's just a hard thing to get behind, you know, when you see all these horrible things happening. So today we're going to talk through, you know, the unfortunate truth, the unfortunate past of religion, the, you know, things that have been done in its name. We're going to talk about, you know, maybe the sort of the true purpose of religion, and then how religion gets a bit misconstrued or even like sort of abused in order to like further, you know, different narratives or ideas. And then finally, we're going to talk about like, yeah, you know, the true purpose of religion, ultimately, we believe is unifying people. We're going to talk about all that, but why don't we start by reading the question?
All right, great. This is from Raya. She says, "Hey guys, when discussing religion with my friends, one thing that always comes up is how religion has led to so much conflict and war throughout the years. I see positive aspects of religion, but it can be hard to get behind when you think about all the terrible things that have been done throughout history with religion as the reason or justification. What are your thoughts?"
Yeah, well, thank you for the question, first of all. And you're right. You know, the unfortunate truth is that religion has been used to like justify terrible things or motivate terrible things throughout history. You know, like in researching this episode, it was quite easy. There was no shortage of, you know, things that religion has been used, like, you know, of course, the Crusades comes to mind. The Inquisition, the Spanish Inquisition comes to mind. Colonialism comes to mind, right? Like there's this sort of missionary undercurrent or missionary rhetoric behind colonialism. We need to save people, you know, through civilization, through religion. But then, of course, it ends up turning into abuse and subjugation. I didn't realize, but apparently the Atlantic slave trade was justified by passages from the Bible. There's this, you know, in Genesis, Ham sees his father naked, and then he gets cursed. All of his descendants gets cursed. That includes Canaan and all of his descendants afterwards. Huh. So they basically said, okay, part of humanity is cursed, so the people that we're taking as slaves are part of the cursed half, and therefore it's fine. Like, you know, there's been all this stuff. And it's not just, you know, sort of these traditional examples. If you look at Southeast Asia, there's a lot of Hinduist nationalist violence, which I hadn't learned much about until I researched this. And of course, you have Islamic extremism. So, you know, there's no shortage to these, you know, things that Raya is talking about. But you know, of course, we recognize that, and yet I think there's this perspective as to like the true nature of religion, and then why these things happen, which we'll jump into it in, of course, a second. But first, do you have any thoughts on what I said?
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, it's undeniable historically how much wars and conflicts and slavery and oppression has sort of come from religion. But I think it's because it's, unfortunately, religion is not, and we'll get into that, but religion is not the reason of these terrible things that have happened. It's the individuals that have sort of translated religion and the Bible and certain things and used it to justify their disgusting behavior. But I'll make this point, and I'll talk about it later. These same atrocities have been committed under non-religious ideologies too. We have nationalism, we have communism, we have fascism. And so we also have this idea of human ambition, power, greed, that play a big role in all of that. And so, when we think about this, we think of fear, we think of hunger for power, all these different things. When mixed with religion, unfortunately, and we can talk about why religion is sometimes the main protagonist of this
division,
fight, of this division. But my real belief is that religion becomes dangerous when it stops becoming the moral compass. The moment it ends, the end of that is the start of political weaponization.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, like people can politically weaponize religion under this guise of a moral compass, but it can be a false, front. It can be a false guise. One of the things, let's just jump into the core of it, the meat and potatoes. I think that, all the examples we mentioned are, examples of one group trying to, other another group. They're trying to subjugate another group or establish their superiority over another group. It's interesting when you look at these religious texts, you don't really find like the justification, when you peel back the layers can be a bit shaky, right? So then you ask yourself, why are these things really happening? And I think a lot of it comes down to the people that are leading these, religions, that are leading these conquests. In some cases, like for the Crusades, they're sort of instigated by the religious establishment. And the religious establishment, wants to stay in power when they're sort of, like ideally, that would not be, they would just be selflessly serving the cause of God. But unfortunately, sometimes humanity kind of like perverts religion or, takes it and twists it to, serve the needs of, a few select group of people, usually the ruling class of that religion. And you see, that written all over many of the examples we spoke about. In other cases, like the Atlantic slave trade, it wasn't necessarily instigated by the religious establishment, but it was a very convenient excuse. People like, there was this, thing about like Canaan's and his descendants being cursed, and like, like good enough. Like it was just convenient for them, to like justify what was like this incredible economic opportunity. And they were like, well, we can feel better about it because X, Y, Z, whatever.
God ordained it.
Yeah, whatever like misconstrued reason. And, you don't actually stop to like peel back, the layers there. One of the things I just like to touch on, and we've mentioned it before, this idea of independent investigation of the truth, right? This idea that, we should decide for ourselves whether something makes sense. Someone says, okay, I'm going to go practice slavery because of this. Like, instead of just blindly accepting it, even if it comes from the religious institution, we should ask questions. Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have two quotes to add to this. To basically show that, and there's many more that shows from every religion that, these things that they have construed from and they've sort of made, it makes sense. No, that's not true. I mean, like, we know that Jesus was about love and about unity and about peace. So it kind of contradicts kind of like what these sayings are saying. In Matthew 5:9, it says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God." And that's, I think, sometimes where it gets misconstrued, like, hey, we're just trying to bring peace, even if we have to kill hundreds of thousands of people in the process. But then Baha'u'llah, who's the founder of the Baha'i faith, this religion is about 200 years old, explicitly states, it doesn't let it fall into translation. He says that if religion be the cause of hatred and dissension, it were better to have no religion. That's pretty harsh.
Yeah, it's funny you brought up Matthew. I have another one from Matthew at 7:16. By their fruits you will know them. This very simple idea of, you will know if someone is Christian by their fruits, by their deeds, right? And, you read the Bible, you read what Jesus preached, and then you contrast that with some of the things that have been done in the name of Christianity, and it's hard to square, and I think that this is a perfect example. Another quote, which I love from the Quran: "Let there be no compulsion in religion." That's from chapter 2, verse 256. Like, it's as simple as that, and yet there have been, examples of people using religion to, force conversion, or if you either convert or you die, or we're the one way of doing things and we're going to conquer you. It's countless. So while I understand Raya is like dismayed at the fact that religion has been used to justify all these things, my experience is when you sort of look at the meat of it, like you actually go to the heart of it, it's not the justification is always shaky at best, and more so it's someone like kind of taking a certain verse and twisting the meaning, basically using it for their own selfish ends. And like you said, it's not just religion. This happens in many different areas, nationalism, like economic, capitalism versus communism. There's countless ways in which the general population is divided for the benefit of, some few small group of people. This is, just one of many, and it's pervasive throughout history, right? Like economic frameworks come and go, nations come and go, but religions are probably the longest standing division we have. And therefore, unfortunately, you see a lot of these examples throughout history.
Yeah, someone would ask this question: what's the point of religion if it creates disunity?
Right.
That's the basics of the question, the core question. And I would say that religion isn't supposed to cause disunity. The purpose of religion is unity.
Like the quote you mentioned,
literally, and so
better to have no religion.
Exactly.
If it causes disunity.
The core message is of all the world religions is that unity, compassion, justice, humility, and many, many more. When religion produces hatred, it's contradicting its own source, literally. And so it's not, disunity is unfortunately a symptom of religion being misused. Right. That's the way I see it.
Yeah.
And so it's as simply put as that. It's like, we can see it as like, a law can be corrupt, like any law, like slavery. It was corrupt. Yeah. But we don't abandon justice, right? There's like these are different points that I want to make. Just because something is wrong doesn't mean that we need to completely get rid of it. Like just because there's parts, my understanding, there's parts of the Bible that someone could translate and say, hey, this proves that slavery needs to exist. Well, that doesn't mean that we need to throw the entire religion out. Right. There's more truth behind all of this, like as you peel the onion, as you like to say. And so we see from the core of it, unity is there. But when people start attaching their own meanings to it to sort of make their own hidden agendas work, that's where we start falling into these traps.
Yeah, that's a good point. And, I really do think it comes back to this idea of independent investigation of the truth. That's like a phrase that's used in the Baha'i faith, which is the tradition that me and Mateen come from. But, you find examples of that core idea, investigating for oneself, in a lot of religions. And I think it's so crucial because a lot of what we're talking about is an example of what happens when religion goes unquestioned, right? When you have a religious ruling class, particularly when you have a theocracy, right? The religious ruling class, like for Iran is a good example, where the people that, run the country do so under sort of the mandate of religion, and they use the religion to justify their actions as government, vice versa. If you grew up in that society and your whole life you're sort of taught never question the religion, never question the authority figures, it's just something that we don't do, then you have, if you're the ruling class of that country, you have this populace that will let you get away with almost anything. And over the years, you can, it's an unfortunate situation what's happened in Iran, and unfortunately it's not unique to Iran. It happens all over, where the religious class sort of uses these shaky religious justifications to, whatever it may be, subjugate the population, increase inequality, wage war. And because this populace, has sort of been taught to not question, they're able to get away with stuff. And by the time people realize, like, wait a minute, what's going on? They begin to question. Sometimes that power can be entrenched. contrast that with a population that's called to independently investigate, like in the Baha'i faith, when you reach the age of 15, you're called to decide if the religion that you were raised in is right for you, or if you would like to go, be a part of another religion or no religion at all. You basically have to make that decision for yourself when you turn 15. And, once again, Matthew 7:16, by their fruits will you know them. I think that's like, if you're 15 and you understand your religion to be this amazing, beautiful, helpful thing, then you probably will stay in that religion. But if you live in a country where that religion is abused and you see the consequences, then you will leave it. And then slowly the power of that ruling class will disappear. So long story short, I think that this idea of independent investigation is, a core, or lack thereof, is a core part to understanding some of this.
So he mentioned independent investigation of truth, and these are sort of the Baha'i tenets that we kind of look at that kind of guide us and provide solutions to these problems that we have. Another one that the Baha'is tend to, another one of our big ones, is the elimination of clerical authority. Basically what, he mentioned about the theocracy in Iran, and what basically by removing, the idea is that in the Baha'i faith, we don't have any priests, don't have any imams, no rabbis, no professional clergy. And so what ends up happening when you remove a clerical authority and you replace it with what we have is 9 individuals who are elected from the community, no money, no fundraisers, no politics are involved, and it's completely it's all volunteer based. Basically gets rid of, as our belief, and we have seen, and it's seen successful at least, is it gets rid of corruption. It gets rid of the abuse of religious authority, and it gets rid of the political manipulation. Because many times we know people that get to the very top, well, it doesn't become so much their beliefs. It's like, who is running the paycheck, who's giving them the money, who's the sort of the bigger participant in all of it, the hidden participant. So it's very important. Blind imitation is not religion. That's just believing in dogmas and traditions. But we live in a society, and I think it goes back to this other part of this idea of the Baha'i writings we look at, is that humanity is in this adolescent stage. And I think this is where, I understand, Raya, where you're coming from, because, as much as we want to be part of change, we're still acting like children. We still are figuring it out. I mean, like, we're much better than we were 300 years ago, but we have immature impulses. We are learning through painful consequences. And it's this, the Baha'i faith believes that it's a constant cycle. Right. Things are going to happen they're slowly going to change. And it's not just, people like to say, like, oh my God, history repeats itself. Well, yeah, it can repeat itself, but there's this idea of consultation, reflection, action, and then again, repeating the process, consultation, reflection. Through this process, every community did that, every nation did that, I'm sure we wouldn't have as many issues as we have today.
Yeah. There's this phrase, which me and my team were having a conversation with a friend the other day, and it was like the favorite phrase of the day. It was like the idea of not throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
I heard this so many times.
Yeah, it's perhaps a bit of a cliche phrase, but I do think the idea behind it is a valuable one. And I'll lean on another analogy that I've used in the past. If you're in a forest, right, there's 2 things happening. Trees are dying and trees are growing. And it's very apparent when a tree dies. It falls over, it crashes, boom, loud explosion. What's a bit more subtle often is the growth that's happening, is the positive aspect. And I think the same thing is true of religion. When we look back on all the horrible things that have been done in the name of religion, rightly so, we're able to recollect all these things because they were horrible mistakes that we made as humanity, and we, have not forgotten them, and hopefully we use them to learn and grow and not repeat the same mistakes. When you look at like the good that has been done in the name of religion, there are some sort of larger, more notable acts, more notable figures, Mother Teresa, etc. But what you often like, there's so many souls out there. There's so many, people that grew up with a religion. Maybe they practice it, maybe they don't. but that religion gave them a sense of what is right and wrong. It gave them a
Right.
sense of kindness,
Right.
of helping out others. And there's just billions of people out there that, due to the religion that they have, within them, they are better, kinder, more generous. They embody these virtues. That's a lot harder to see than these large, notable examples. So, like the Crusades, the Inquisitions, those are the trees falling in my analogy. And then just the countless billions of people that are just ever so slightly nicer, kinder. That's all the sort of saplings in my analogy. It's harder to notice that, but I do think that religion, in summation, has done more good than harm.
Oh yeah.
And that's kind of where this idea of being careful about not throwing the baby out with the bathwater comes from.
Yeah, I think your point, it's done way too much good than harm. Again, it's not the individuals, it's not the founders of the faiths like Jesus Christ and Muhammad and Baha'u'llah that have any ill will towards society. They want the best. It's unfortunately over time, it's the individuals that like to scrutinize it and make it their own way. Again, we want to be very clear. Every religion has a right to exist and to participate in the society of humans. We've seen that it not only, as you mentioned, shapes consciousness. It gives us all these virtues, this moral understanding, and it unites people under a shared moral purpose. Now, that third point also is the reason why it causes also so much division, because division is a very powerful tool for people. When you do division, all of a sudden, you mentioned it, us versus them, chosen versus the condemned,
Right.
Pure versus impure. And we know that religion provides a very deep emotional identity. Let me just look at history, colonialism and nationalism and all these other individuals. Look at many countries even today, Italy and Spain are very religious, and they're like, they hold that to themselves compared to even the US. And so because of this divine legitimacy, it also is extremely useful for those that are seeking control. Because they take that, they're like, that's also the whole independent investigation of truth, is like, you get to decide on your own. But if you're born into a religion and that's all you saw and all your parents told you about in your community, and all of a sudden someone comes to you and says, I want to believe in something else, it's easier for you to control them and say, no, you're not going to. But when all of a sudden religion is more of a freedom and you can associate yourself with whoever you want, it's all of a sudden it's hard to control people. But that's not the point of religion.
Yeah, certainly I agree. It's an excellent point. I think, like, as we're sort of beginning to wrap up here, I just want to summarize what we mentioned, like the idea that there have been horrible things that have been done in the name of religion. And yet when you peel back the layers, oftentimes you find these very shaky justifications. And what you really find is people in power using religion to sort of shove a wedge into society and a population. When you look at all these horrible things that have happened in the history of humanity, some of the worst, most shameful acts that humanity has perpetrated, you always find this dehumanizing of the other side of the conflict, right? Mm-hmm. People can justify things like concentration camps or genocide or whatever it may be because they say they are, the people that were perpetrating these acts on they're less than human. So it's it's completely justified. That's unfortunately the rhetoric that you find throughout history with these horrible acts. And how ironic that religion is often used as the basis when the purpose of religion, I believe, is to unify us. It's like this like horrible irony that it's being used in this way, completely antithetical to its true purpose, in my opinion.
Yeah, and if I could leave anything with anyone, really is that it really starts from us. It starts from the grassroots. It starts from our communities. We can't expect wars to end. We're not in politics. We're not presidents of any country, not kings or queens. So it really has to start from us. It starts from our communities, our friendships. And I really believe that anything in terms of when we have conflicts, any resolution, it comes from consultation.
What's consultation?
So consultation is where individuals, arrive together on a point. It addresses polarization. There's basically no winning arguments, and ego-driven disagreements are sort of like thrown out the window. Truth emerges through collective humility. Ideas are detached from personalities, and at the end of the day, the truth wins. So even if you disagree with someone, you respect their belief.
Yeah.
You may even pray on it. You may meditate on it, but you say, you know what, for the betterment and for the peace of that talk or that consultation I'm with that another individual, I'm going to respect them and I'm going to leave it at it as it is. Right. And maybe in the future, it may come realize, you know what, you're right, your point was correct, but that doesn't mean that we need to start be violent or justify violence towards each other. And so why does it matter? Because our egos don't matter. That's really what it is. That's why I think where wars and conflicts really come from. It's an ego speaking. And if we can throw that away and we can focus on ourselves, and what makes us human is, again, we're created in the image of God. And I'm sure God didn't want us to be killing each other. So if we can really do that and we can put away our identities and focus on the truth, which is religion at the core of it is unity, then I'm sure we can get ahead and not be stuck in these old ways. Because unfortunately, I understand Raya. I totally understand her. It's like, when is the change going to happen? It's been thousands of years, wars after war, religion after religion, and we don't seem to understand. But that's why it starts from us. Yeah,
and I do think it is getting better. Thankfully, a lot of what we mentioned as far as these religious justified atrocities, they are thankfully for the most part hundreds of years in the past. And up until recently in the world, we were in a unprecedented period of peace. We hadn't seen this much peace in the sort of history of the world. So we're getting better. We just have to be patient.
Yeah.
Just give it a couple hundred years. We'll get better slowly as humanity. At least that's my belief.
And I want to add one more thing. I think it's really important here is that the future, and I'm not saying a utopian society, the future of the world should be that we can disagree with each other. We can ask questions. We can think independently without our communities fragmenting. That's the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
Religion will get us there, but we have to learn to cooperate with one another.
Hopefully that was helpful, Raya. Thank you for writing in. If you enjoyed the show, first of all, thank you. We appreciate it. The best way to support us, we're a super young podcast. We're just getting our start. The best thing you can do is share this episode with a friend, a group of friends who you think maybe might be interested in it. Of course, all the usual like, comment, subscribe, that's helpful too. But sharing the episode is really the best way you can support us. So thank you. And if you have a question, a topic that you'd like to see on the show, please write in. There's a link in the description. We would love to hear from you. And if you have thoughts on this topic, please leave them in the comments. We'd love to engage with all you guys.
Yeah, we're still learning, and we'd love to hear from you in your comments and like to see your perspectives and points of view. So thank you for joining in.
Yeah, thanks for listening, guys. See you.